Hello and welcome. This is NTA Tuesday Live, and I'm Cyril Stober. Now, Nigeria's political terrain has been associated with violence, so bad that it's almost becoming a norm. Now, the just concluded 2019 general elections had its fair share of violence across the country. And so many questions have been asked. Why is it that elections are usually fraught with violence, and what can be done to stem the tide of violence? What's in Nigeria's politics that determines that contestants have to resort to other means than the ballot box to assert their candidacy or their popularity for public office? These are some of the issues we'll be considering tonight on NTA Tuesday Live with a panel of discussants. I'd like to go straight to introduce you to our guest tonight. Let me welcome to this program Barrister Esther Uzoma, who is National Coordinator, Proactive Gender Initiative. Thanks for being here with us.
Thank you very much.
All right. Let me also welcome to this program Professor Tawhid Adedoja is a professor of education, a former Minister of Sports and Special Duties, and a former governorship candidate in Oyo State. Prof, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Of course, we'll be getting that angle from you, having run for political office. We'll be finding out why politicians would rather engage violence than the ballot papers. Thanks for being with us once again. Let me also welcome to this program another lawyer. He's Barrister Johnson Usman. He's a legal practitioner. Thanks for joining us here.
You're welcome.
All right. So let me acquaint you with the procedure. We always do this every Tuesday. And at the appropriate time, you can get to be part of the discussion in the studio. The various platforms will be on your screen. I advise you take advantage of them. However, for those who will be phoning in tonight, we say this every Tuesday, when your call gets through, do us a favor, turn down the volume of your TV set. Just reduce the volume. That's the way to avoid the hurlback or the echo, if you like. And the best way to know that your call is through to the studio, you'll see your name on screen. Once your name appears on screen, it means, of course, that your call is through to the studio, and you can go right ahead with your question or comment. We advise you keep it short and straight to the point so that others can also get on the platform. Whatever issues you raise, I'm certain that our guests will respond to them. So we'd like to welcome you to NTA Tuesday Live. We're talking about curbing electoral violence tonight. And we, apart from the guests who are here in our Abuja studio, we also have joining us from our Kaduna Network Center, Hajia Khadija Gambo, who's a permanent commissioner, Kaduna State Peace Commission. She joins us from our Kaduna Center. Thanks for being with us on NTA Tuesday Live tonight. Let's start off straight away. And I suppose the first question would be why violence has been associated with politics in Nigeria. But first, let's even put in context what this violence can be. Prof, we have here, has been in the field too. And why is it that violence is so prevalent in Nigerian politics?
Because of the power associated with positions in this country. Legislative provisions, being a governor of a state, being a senator, the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. People want to get to these positions by all means. And they believe that, yeah, the ballot box is there, but there could be some other way around to get the number that they want to win election. So there's an incentive. And that incentive is provided by the candidates themselves who want to win elections by all means. So they create the environment for violence in the constituencies in which particularly they feel they may not win election.
Right.
And therefore they disrupt the system in order to provide the environment for them to carry, ballot papers, ballot boxes away so that they are either not counted or they are counted in their favor. So the incentive is by the candidates themselves who want to win election by all means, at all costs.
All right. When you say there's power in political office, such as the governor, a senator, a member of the assembly, would that power also translate to economic power?
It's unfortunate that because of the poverty level of our youths in this country, our youth look for very simple way of income. And the best time is during elections because the money is provided for voting. The money is provided to create an environment of violence among the electorate. So you now discover that rather than empowering the youth before the election, they hold back their purse and give out the money to do the bidding of the politicians, the bidding of those that are contesting that want to win election by all means.
All right. We'll come back to you in a moment, but let's go to Barrister Esther Uzoma. And you have observed elections in this country, and of course you've noticed the trend. What have you seen, and why do you think what's happening is happening?
Thank you very much. Well, okay, from Rivers State to Zamfara, from Kano to the FCT, from Imo State to Anambra, our elections are pervaded with violence. Violence is a part of human nature. Soyinka, writing in The Gods Are Not to Blame, said that the struggles of man begins at birth. People always tend to violence to achieve their aim because this is planet Earth, this is not paradise. But it is the place of the law to elevate a standard, to raise a standard of behavior so that whatever your tendencies are, once it falls short of the standards we have all given to ourselves, I'm not talking about the social contract, then the law will come, Lady Justice will wield her long sword. So violence, human beings tend to violence, but it is the law. Remember, we all decided to give up our powers to the to a person. When we were forming, that is the beginning, the primordial beginnings of state. Now, having said that, do you know why violence pervades? Because our systems are porous. The violators, the actors know that they can get away with it. They know how porous our criminal justice system particularly is. A country of over 200 million, look at the mayhem that was unleashed in Kano. Where are you going to put all those perpetrators? If you say you want to, arrest them and try them, incarcerate them, where will you put them? They overwhelmed the state. Simple. So the truth of the matter is this. Beginning with our criminal justice system before the elections, we have very, very weak, slow systems. And they do not become better because the election seasons are upon us. So when it is heightened, that pressure that has been brought to bear almost crumbles the system. That is why you see policemen who are jacked by civilians. That is why you see civilians wearing camouflage, sometimes of the Nigerian army, in broad daylight, in a flagrant, vulgar manner, operating as if they are the officers of state. Because before elections, our systems were not strong enough. And further to that, it's also the flagrant, vulgar manner in which state executives control the apparatus of violence. We saw them, they call them vigilantes. State governors have security forces of their own, outside the forces of state. You see the confusion? They have, across the country, state governors under various names, they have security outfits who unleash violence on the citizens, particularly their political opponents. And it comes to a head during the elections. So that is the quagmire.
Well, you've raised so many issues. We'll examine them in further detail. But let's come to Johnson Usman and get his perspective on the issue of violence, electoral violence.
First and foremost, let me align myself with the submissions of the two speakers. Our quest for power at all costs is the genesis of violence in our system. I must get it at all costs. If it is not I, it cannot be anyone else. Whether you like it or not, I must rule. That is the genesis of our problem. And it continued unabatedly because of the porous judicial system we have. Secondly, our attitude to selfless behavior, lack of value for self, is what prompts people into violence. For instance, Mr. Cyril, I will not engage in violence no matter the amount of money you will pay me. Why? Because I have value for my life. I have value for myself. Where a man does not have value for his life, he is prone to anything. And anything that comes his way, he will take it. So, apart from quest for power at all costs, the perpetrators of this violence also have no value for their lives. If you do, you will foresee the repercussion, either immediate or in the future. Because when you go out to harm someone, the probability or possibility of being harmed is there. So when you future all these things together, you will not engage in violence. More so, as the second speaker said, and rightly too, where you have a system that is porous, where one can do and go away with it, where he is involving in this violence for those in power, for those in charge of the security, for those who have the power to punish, and he knows that I is their agent, of course he will engage in it and go freely. So a lot of attributes are reasons for this violence, especially in our political atmosphere. And what is more, poverty. That is the bedrock. Where a man cannot feed his family, where a man does not know what next he will eat, of course, give that man a little thing to eat and ask him to go and do what you want, he will. So there are a lot of reasons why people engage themselves in violence. And it's very unfortunate too.
Okay, at this point we'll go over to our Kaduna Center and we'll put the same question to Hajia Khadija. Well, Nigerians saw what happened at the 2019 general elections, but that wasn't the first time. It had been happening over time since the return to democratic governance. But it had, but many had hoped that the nation would be spared the agony of seeing mayhem, but that didn't happen. So what's in it, in the people, in the system, in Nigeria's politics, that tends to attract violence?
Well, frankly speaking, when there's desperation from those in power or desperation from those who want to get to power, and also when there's a perception that there's going to be injustice, or there's a likelihood of injustice, that people resort to violence. And so also this feeling that whatever I do, I can get away with it, also sometimes contributes to the kind of violence that we see. And most especially, looking at the history of Nigeria, we have come a long way and we are so characterized by a series of violent conflict. And so people are so used to violence to the extent that any little thing can trigger violence. And elections is one of those triggers of violence. So I think for Nigeria to overcome violence, we really need to do a lot to settle our problems that have to do with communal, clashes. And so if we are able to sort ourselves, if we are able to embrace one another, if we are able to coexist harmoniously with one another, I don't think elections will be one of those things that will divide. More so because why do we go for elections? We go for elections because we want to elect leaders who will lead us, who will govern us well, who will give us the best of all that we want. And so I think it has to do with desperation to hold on to power sometimes, or desperation to get to power. And so giving no regard to what happens. And for most people, the end justifies the means. And so that's why we experience a lot of violence in Nigeria.
All right, thanks for giving us that insight. But you raised something. You said where there's perception of injustice. That would suggest that sometimes people think there's no equity in what they're involved in. But the question is, has violence really solved any of that? Have people been able to achieve justice and equity through being violent?
In fact, we're heading towards destruction by adopting violence as a means of settling disputes or disagreements or misunderstandings. And that's why, for example, let me specifically speak about Kaduna State, which is where that's my jurisdiction, and that's where I have worked. To say that Kaduna State has experienced a prolonged, and protracted violent conflict, so much so that relationships become broken and friendship, the ties of friendship became severed. And so that's what brought even to what actually caused the birth of this Kaduna State Peace Commission that I'm a permanent commissioner in. Then the need to have a platform that will address those issues that people fight over came. And so the governor of Kaduna State, Malam Nasir El-Rufai, 2 years ago, inaugurated this commission. And the essence is to address those issues. And when we talk about conflict, sometimes there are realities. Some of the issues are real, some are perceptions. But how do you know what is real and what is a perception? You have to talk, because we realize that what has happened is that there's a break in communication. People have stopped communicating, and so a lot of mistrust. Nobody trusts the other, and there's a lot of suspicion. And so when election comes, everybody wants to prove that, okay, I want my own because that's where I feel protected. So the Kaduna State Peace Commission created a platform where now all stakeholders, relevant stakeholders, came together. We sat together in what we call the Election Monitoring Committee, which has the membership, for example, of the Nigerian Bar Association. There's a membership there. They have a membership. We have also the Nigerian, that is NUJ, the Nigerian Union of Journalists. We also have the civil society also with us. We have the security, for example, the police, the civil defense. We had the DSS with us. So we have some membership from Jama'atul Nusrat Islam, membership from the CAN, that is the Christian Associations of Nigeria. We all sat together. And what did we do? 6 months prior to the elections, we sat down. One, we started with a parley with all political parties and candidates. Why did we do that? We did that so that we can enter into an agreement that all candidates contesting all the various positions must conduct themselves in such a way that they are not insightful in the way they campaign, and that even after elections, whatever happens, now they should accept it in good faith and not resort to violence. And they pledged and agreed that they were going to conduct themselves peacefully. We monitored that. We continue to monitor what was happening to make sure that anytime we detect anything that has the likelihood of causing problem, we quickly address it. So we were in constant, contact with the security, making sure that whatever will cause violence was checked. And thanks also to the good people of Kaduna, they actually, cooperated, and that's why Kaduna is peaceful. Because, Cyril, let me tell you that there's no single report that came out that spoke about Nigerian elections 2019 that did not, speculate that Kaduna was going to be violent. Some people thought that elections will not even hold in Kaduna. But thanks to such reports, because at least we woke up from our slumber and we worked together. Then again, another thing that worked, apart from the people of Kaduna, being peaceful, also the government of Kaduna, because sometimes the reasons why we have such violence is because when you have a government that insists that it is what they want that will happen, a government that is insensitive to the feeling or aspiration of its people, then definitely there's going to be violence. And so what we had in Kaduna was that the government did not interfere in the elections. They conducted themselves. In fact, even the governor was with us when he took the pledge alongside other candidates that they were going to be peaceful. And so that worked for us. And also we have the presence of the special advisor to Malam Nasri El-Rufai in that committee that monitors elections. So whatever we do, he goes back to him to tell him that this is the agreement of the Peace Commission. And I think that helped a lot with also the religious leaders whom we said, please do not adopt any candidate, do not adopt any party. I think that helped us a lot. So it's about everybody playing his part, not insisting that it has to be my way. I think that was what helped us in Kaduna State.
All right, thank you very much. We'll return to you in a moment. But back here in Abuja, let's take on Professor Adedoja with this matter to do with agreeing, excuse me, coming to agreements before elections. But we saw some politicians sign an accord. But some Nigerians say, well, the leaders, the candidates may sign those agreements. The followership do not append their signature. Therefore, they're open to carry out violence.
Agreements signed by politicians before elections are not necessarily binding, but like we pointed out, will there be a situation when the followers, the voters, will also agree not to perpetrate violence during elections? But I'm worried about one matter, and that is, why is it that it is the children of the poor, the youths that are unemployed? Why are children of the elite not implicated in cases of violence in this country? Definitely there's a relationship between the level of education, level of literacy, and cases of violence in any country all over the world. So that means that we must give priority attention to educating our people. It's ironical. During elections, you have cases of violence, and when the candidates are collecting their certificates, they are not joined by the thugs that they had used to perpetrate violence. But you find they collecting their certificates from INEC, and they are accompanied by their wives and their children. And the unfortunate thing about our legal system, I don't have the figure with me, but we read cases of violence during elections in this last election. We saw on TV, we heard on radio on cases. People will ask the questions: how many have been jailed? How many have been tried? So there is really something wrong in our legal system. Out of cases of 100, today, I've not had any cases of youths that had been implicated in cases of violence during the last elections that are in prison or in court because they are bailed out by the same system. Attitude and behavior is reinforced by punitive measures. Once you get out of it, in 2015, expect more in another next 4 years because nothing has happened.
That's right.
So our legal system must really take care of the cases of acts of violence during elections. They get scot-free. Oh, Mr. A has been arrested. 10 people have been arrested. 3-4 days, they are bailed by the same system. There is definitely something wrong with our system.
Well, with due respect to politicians, you often hear people say many politicians, most politicians have perfected the art of double-speak. We see them out the rostrum, and they say all the ideals, speak of all, the ideal situations, and even pledge and seem to tell their followers, don't do things that are untoward. But behind the scenes, it's the same people who arm the thugs, who even create those vanguards and send them out. So where is it that the people fail to realize that they are just being used by those who insist on them sticking their necks out to commit acts that might that might lead to either injury, death, or incarceration for them?
Like I said, people that had perpetrated violence in elections, in this last election, nothing has happened to them. So no matter what accord you sign before election, it's not going to work. Rhetorics by politicians are centered upon their expectations that everything will be all right. Everything will be all right on their part. The moment the table is turned, the activities are also turned towards perpetrating violence. That is the problem. What you perceive is different from what you really see on the field. And that is an issue.
All right. Esther Zomal, perhaps we can look at what the law says, what should happen to people who engage in this sort of activity, and what are the loopholes, what do they exploit in order to commit these offenses, and knowing that they'll be back perhaps in another 4 years to even perpetrate greater evil.
You see, the greatest tragedy we have is that sometimes our law follows our politics. Sometimes you can almost guess. It's like a typical Nigerian movie. They end from the beginning of a trial because of the nature of the politics, because of the political party in power. You see, generally, human beings do not attempt the impossible. They do what can be done. They engage in violence because they can. Human beings don't eat their children because they are hungry. It's not poverty that drives people to violence. It is a lack of standard to enforce our collective consciousness, our collective nuance, codified in our laws. It is that lack of will to say, listen, this is what we have all agreed. It is because people can break it with impunity. That is why they break it. Not because they are hungry. Let me tell you, when poor people know that if they are arrested and incarcerated, or whatever extreme measures is taking them because of electoral violence, they will desist. But when a godfather somewhere say, listen, nothing will happen. That's a Nigerian language. Impunity is the culture of the political class. Impunity is the culture of the political class. That is why it thrives. That is where you see young, able Nigerians. They hold guns in a flagrant manner. I have observed the election on my feet. I have observed the elections across this country. You see thugs, these people we call thugs, side by politicians, by our security agencies, smoking banned substances. I mean, in the presence of security agencies, holding their own alternative armory in the presence of state security agencies, because somebody has told them nothing will happen. You see, that's why human beings don't, no. For instance, human beings don't fly because they know they can't fly. It's the things they can do that they do. So it's because of these persons, the political class, they are our worst headache. They have no rules of engagement. Everything works for them as long as they are winning. They're the ones who mobilize, who sustain violence. Violence is the trait, is the currency of our politics. And so the law prohibits violence. But our courts will not act. No judge will convict a criminal who is not brought before him. So whose duty is it to bring a culprit before a court of law? And when they refuse, when they do not bring them, what happens? You see? Even when they bring them and they don't bring evidence. That is why you see judges, they say, oh, this person, oh, he was a kidnapper. He engaged in killing. He's a headsman killer. So discharged and what? Acquitted. The judge will always say, based on the evidence before me, or prosecutorial misconduct, lack of diligent prosecution. That is the language. Because there's an institution that is closing its eyes. An institution that has been infiltrated by the political class. Have you not seen how political appointment of persons to these sensitive institutions are? And so they have the impression that they exist at the pleasure of whoever appointed them. And so they execute the duties of their office to please whoever their perceived master is. And so we suffer. That this is this vicious circle of political violence.
Now, Professor Adedojo raised an interesting point. So when they go out to the field to do battle, as they say, they have the army of thugs to go with. But when it's time to collect those certificates, they're joined by members of their family and their friends in high places. Doesn't that send a signal to those who have been used and dumped like cannon fodder?
It should send that signal. But the pleasure of violating the laws is a greater incentive. Hello? Yes. It's honey. It's like, listen, bringing Lady Justice and desecrating at her altars. The very pleasure of walking to hallowed chambers, person said that no guns are permitted. You are the one who bring guns there. Haven't you seen the people we call political talks? They're not granting press interviews. They grant, they speak authoritatively. Politicians even go now and dobale for them after they win the elections. That's where we are going. And that is the primordial state of, that's Wild Wild West. Because the law that should set the common standard for human behavior, people are, so the pleasure of flouting our laws, desecrating our constitution, you know, listen, take me to the police and I'll come out the next day. That pleasure surpasses the pleasure of the paparazzi of collection of certificate of return. That is so sweet. Criminal will tell you, listen, this thing will not happen here. We are policeman, I will remove you, I will remove your uniform. And you think it's a joke. 1 week after, the policeman is no longer there. Did we not see one policeman who dared to stand his ground in Kano? Did we not see what happened? No, in this Nigerian state. So what are we saying? The criminals know that the states have even come to, you know, agree, acknowledge their existence as alternate security agencies. It's like a tacit agreement. The army even told us that the people who were causing mayhem in River State are fake. So in broad daylight, fake people, is that not a serious breach of security? Crossed like 3 army checkpoints to go and collect collation papers, ballot boxes, and then they walk away. Nobody was caught. In broad daylight, not at night. The Nigerian army said it. And that is it. So it's a charade.
Right, Johnson Usman, would you say that the security agencies are overwhelmed, or is it that we have not taken this as seriously as we should as a nation?
Cyril, when a man sees a thing and decides to close his eyes to it, he does not see.
That's right.
It is practically impossible for a thug to come to a polling unit manned by a policeman, a military man, civil defense, and take away the ballot box and go freely.
Well, the police right there, you know, the closest proximity to voting point, are not armed. They're unarmed.
When you send a man to a war zone and you say go without arm, what are you sending him for?
It was Nigerians themselves who said arming policemen at the voting points would be intimidating voters.
That is not true. We have gone round so many states in this election and discovered that the policemen were armed, the army were armed, other security agents were armed, but right there in their presence, the ballot snatching, tearing of ballot papers, disruption of collation, and what have you. Yet, these people go free in their very presence. It shows that the thugs are coming in agreement with the security posted at that place.
Oh, yes.
It is not possible for a thug to walk freely to a polling unit manned by these people and then go away with a ballot box unattended to. It is practically impossible. When you see what happened in Rivers State, you go to Kano State, you go to Kogi State, you go to Anambra State, you come to a logical conclusion that the political class, the thugs, are working in conjunction with the security agents. And because it is said, he that pays the piper dictates the tune. The people that post those people there posted them for a reason. And when you post a man there for a reason, he must accomplish the reason for which you send him. And that is exactly what happened in our election. So it's not possible to say, and I don't believe, I don't agree, I can't be corrected that the policemen are posted there without arms. It's not true.
Well, from all what's happening, the armed personnel are supposed to be at the 300-meter perimeter.
Yes.
Those who were close to the box are unarmed, and we saw a number of cases where people dared to pick up the boxes, smash them, you know, throw out all the papers.
What is the difference between 6 and half a dozen?
All right.
That is exactly the answer I have for this.
Okay, let's go back.
It's deliberate.
Okay.
They are doing it deliberately.
Let's go back to Kaduna now. And Hajiya Khadija, well, the thing is, yes, as you said earlier, a lot of people expected that Kaduna would be a hotbed. Perhaps we should say mercifully it wasn't, you know, contrary to all speculations. But the question again is that, is this a sustainable move that you have put down? In other words, if it was possible to get the people to cooperate, to get the people to do things the right way and not resort to violence all along, why wasn't this done?
Yeah, the Peace Commission came into being, I told you, as a result of the series of violence, that the conflict that Kaduna State has been experiencing. And so the mandate given to the Commission is to work with the people and all relevant stakeholders to make sure that we commence talking. What do I mean by we commence talking? Because relationships have broken. And even in settlements, the settlements are so polarized along ethnic and religious divides. And so for us to come back to what we used to be, to how it used to be, to coexist and harmoniously and peacefully, there's a need to have a platform where people will begin to speak and then understand one another and then begin to now trust, and then respect also will come back. And so for us, it's not just about elections, it is about everything. It is about everything. But why we became more serious during elections was because if you look at the history of the most violent, conflict in Kaduna, was 2011, what Kaduna witnessed. So we didn't want a repeat of that. And so there was a need to re-strategize, to put all our hands on deck to make sure that what we've started, because since we came into being, we've started negotiating, discussing, dialoguing with all the various ethnic communities, and we are beginning to understand one another. So we didn't want the elections to be what will take us back to where we didn't want to go. So for us, it's going to be sustained. The dialogue is ongoing, and it just didn't end with the elections, that, okay, we have a peaceful elections, and so we're not going to be talking. No. We are yet to even dissolve the committee that was set to monitor the elections, because we believe that, of course, there are people who are not too happy because who are aggrieved, and so there's a need to sit with them and understand that Kaduna and the citizens of Kaduna are more important than any personal aspiration or whatever one wants to have. So we are in a continuous dialogue with all of the contestants, all of the people who contested for the various positions, including those who won, that we must not see it as a one-man show, that because one person won the elections, it should not be, okay, winners take it all, but that it should be done in a way that everybody will feel carried along. So that's what we're doing. So we are going to sustain this kind of dialogue. We are going to sustain this kind of consultation, the advocacy, and of course the mass campaign on media with the jingles calling people to embrace peace. It's so interesting, the discussion around this culture of violence. I think what we need is reorientation. Nigerians need reorientation. We have become so used to violence to the extent that we no longer feel bad when life is lost. In fact, you hear people say, we only lost 10, we only lost 50. And so it is not about how many died, it is about losing a life, which is sacred and very, very important. So Nigerians, we are working towards reorientating the people of Kaduna to have value for life, to respect life, and to also appreciate the diversity and coexist peacefully with one another, respecting the different cultures of the various communities that exist in Kaduna State, and that's what we're doing. So election is just one of it, but we intend to continue, and we will sustain this for as long as it takes us to restore Kaduna back to the glorious days of when Kaduna was a mini Nigeria where everybody loves to come and settle.
All right, the phone lines are already open, and I do think that we have a first call coming through. Yeah, we do. We have a first call. Abdullahi, who's calling in from Abuja. Hello, Abdullahi. Do we still have Abdullahi on the line? All right. We'll have challenges with that line, but just keep the calls coming through. We should perfect that as we go on and get in the views and opinions of other Nigerians who are watching this program tonight. But back here in the Abuja studio, what can be done to stem all the violence that we're watching? Some people have said yes, like Professor Adedoja, when you started off, you said the power, that the office, the political office holds. It's an incentive for people to want to do anything to control it. And Nigerians have said, why don't we take a second look at political office? Make sure that it's not as lucrative as we have seen it. And so if, for instance, a member of the National Assembly, a senator, for instance, knew that he was just going to be on part-time basis and that his take-home pay would be no more than, people in the civil service, for instance, then the incentive to want to get to that position by all means would not be there. The same thing for the governors. If, a governor knows that he won't turn out to be the monarch of all his surveys, then probably he wouldn't want to do everything under the sun to be made governor.
But why do you want to occupy a position by all means? What is power after all? If attainment of power is for good governance, and your followers perpetrate violence during elections, that is the beginning of negativity.
So the whole concept is turned upside down then. So if it's all of it, so then it's not about service.
No, it's not about service.
That's the trouble.
Yeah. Remember, I used the word power as different from governance. People want power, not to govern. People want power for oppression. People want power because of the perennial office. People want power by all means. And therefore, they seek power. And when they get the power, they forget about the followers that assisted them to get to that powerful position. I think it's about desperation. I think it's about lack of fear of God. I think it's about not taking care of the common people. It's just seeking power. I have got it, I have got it. Like Hajia from Kaduna said, we need orientation in this country. It is not about power, it's about opportunities to serve. People are not looking at that opportunity to serve, but opportunity to sit on that position to say, I am this, I am that. And of course, what is the end result of it? Death. I think the most important thing is to think about the people, to think about Nigeria as a country, not to think about ourselves. It's about self. Self, that is the beginning of self-destruction in this country.
All right,
particularly among politicians.
Okay, let's try the phones again and see. This time we have from Kaduna calling in Aliu. Hello, Aliu. Can we get Aliu on the line? Is he still on the line with us? Hello? Okay. Okay, we can get through to Aliu. Well, okay, we'll keep trying. Well, that's the result.
Yes. You see, the whole idea of seeking disincentivizing political office, I frankly, I don't agree. Today, if you say senators will not be paid salary, the office will still be attractive. How? Do you know, we are a huge economy. Do you know the incentive they will get from people who want one document to be signed or the other? I'm telling you, over 200 million people and counting. Even if you say today nobody should be paid salary, it will still be intensely contested. So it's not about incentives. Yes, cars will still be given to them to market. So over 200, that's not a joke. Yes. You see, before elections generally, Nigerian army had presence in about 34 states. And yet we are not at war. They were keeping the peace. From Ayampatuma to Egweke, Python Dance 1 and 2. All sorts of peacekeeping. Internally, Nigerian army, not the police, were already spread across about 34 states. And we are not at war. We are not at war. What is going on? You see the tragedy? Look at what is happening in Zamfara. Just from here, from Abuja to Kaduna, have bandits not taken over and we are not at war? Hello? When are we going to wake up and decide to salvage this country? It is falling apart. The people who are bearing arms have strongly, they have openly, flagrantly challenged the legitimate forces of state. The state monopoly of violence is broken. It's broken. And that is one of the foremost instruments of coercion. And how did we get here? Because little by little, the political class kept on itching. They kept on tugging. They'll take a piece today, and then a whole tank kept on dripping water. And suddenly, our tank is empty. And we are still, when are we going to wake up? We have a state of emergency in our hands. Look at the budget that Army proposed in peacetime. Did you not see it? In peacetime. If we don't stop the political class, they will stop at nothing.
But how do you do that?
Very simple. We are not a divided country. We are just Nigerians. The first thing they will bring is to sell those things that will divide us. And sometimes the media helps them. It is Fulani headsmen. It is Christian killers. No, those are outlaws. Those are people existing outside the fringes of the laws. Why don't we treat them as such? Must we bring ethnic coloration to crimes and decide who will get away and who will be punished? That is the currency of the political class. They divide us. At the end of the day, when you are hungry, you are neither poor nor rich. If you don't have money, poverty is not ethnicized. But they are the ones who trade on it. They even fuel it, set up platforms. And so, instead of us Nigerians realizing that we are the ones who are dying, we attack each other. People always say that it's people, that poor man, they don't like seeing themselves. Don't we see how the rich, they are together. They pop champagne in peace. But it is we that say, oh, you're a Christian, you're a Muslim. You don't speak English, you speak English. And they divide us with that narrative. Because once we are divided and distracted, they now loot our common treasury. Nobody renders account. So until we, the Nigerian, we must wake up from this slumber. In law, we say that equity heads the vigilant, not the indolent. Until we decide to salvage this country, there will be no salvation. Until we decide that, listen, you see that big man? There was a celebrated big man that was caught in Kano by an astute police officer. When is he going to face the law? Did we not see a governor shoving money into his agbada? Hello? If we do not subject, particularly the big fish.
Well, with respect to that, well, as a lawyer yourself, do know that a man is presumed innocent.
And so that presumption of, I say there's a prima facie. And if you are somebody who is not stealing will not be stuffing all that.
But it's not been proved anyway. That's the whole point.
So whatever the story is about it, can we subject it to the law?
Well, how do you walk out of it?
I agree with the professor when he said that until we make the political offices less lucrative, there shall continue to be intense contests. The reason is not far-fetched. When a man who is aspiring to an office knows the benefits, the paraphernalia of that office, the buffet that exists in that office, he will do everything to get there. But of course, when he knows that in getting there, he's getting there to serve and not to enrich himself, he will come to reality that if I spend so much to get there and earn nothing in return, I am losing something. It is only in Nigeria you see a senator earning more than a president of a country. There are presidents of so many countries that don't earn what our legislators earn. Why won't they do everything to get there? So until that offices are less incentive, less lucrative, we are nowhere to go. And another thing you said, where the political elites use the thugs in achieving, in climbing there, of course they dump them. Again, until we realize that we are being used by the political class, political elites, and wake up to reality and face them, we go nowhere in this country. The reason all these things are happening is we have not been able to confront them. Mm-hmm. When you use people, you dump them, you attend the class, you take your children abroad to school, and our universities are on strike, our polytechnics are on strike. Of course, the politicians will do everything to get there. So I am of the view that reforming the political offices to be less attractive, less incentive, may be one of the way out.
Okay, so we'll try again and try with the phones once more. From Eula, we have Ibrahim calling in. Ibrahim from Eula, hello. Let's hope we can get this call through this time around. Ibrahim from Eula, are you there with us? Okay, well, it's a little bit challenging tonight, but we hope whatever it is, we'll be able to get through with the calls and have some people contribute to this discussion. But for the moment, we'll take a short break. When we return, we'll look at other ways of bringing down the spate of violence in Nigerian politics. And we ask you to stay with us on NTA Tuesday Live. We'll be back shortly.
Nigerians, our fearless officers and men of the Nigerian military are winning the war against Boko Haram. Today, all occupied territories have been recovered and Boko Haram has been degraded. Our affected brothers and sisters are getting their lives back. However, they are now after you and me. In our mosques, churches, schools, motor parks, markets, entertainment centers, and public gatherings. Be vigilant. Be security conscious. Report suspicious persons, objects, and movements to the police and other security agencies. The security of our nation is a duty for you and me. Nigeria, unite against terrorism.
This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
The struggle for independence had been a long and tough one. Our founding fathers and compatriots sacrificed their comfort and even shed their blood. We cannot at this point in history afford to spirit away their sacrifices for immediate but temporary gains of today. Let us emphasize what unites and not what divides us. Working for the unity of purpose with a stronger vision for a better tomorrow. NTA, growing with the nation.
Nigeria, the only country we can train with remarkable potentials to excel. Let us believe in ourselves and change our attitude for the sake of our country and generations unborn. Let us revive our cultural values, which are our essence as a nation. Let us renew the spirit of patriotism and hope in our dear country. Do not take or give bribe. Be punctual always. No more African time. We can't expect to be global citizens and operate on African time. Join the queue. Insist that people are attended to on a first-come basis, no matter who they are or where they come from.
Nigeria, good people, great nation.
Make you report any crooked person, object or wakajube movement to police and security agent demo.
The security of our nation now work for all of us, plus including me and you.
Nigeria, make we unite against terrorism. Now, Federal Minister of Information and Culture bring on this message.
NTA Tuesday Live, a network issue-oriented innovation talk show.
All right, thanks for staying with us. It's a matter like this definitely would attract heated debates and discussions were going on even behind the scenes while the break was on, and that's expected because you have what has been called a serious situation on our hands. But let's go back to our Kaduna Center and Hajia Khadija. People have talked about money in politics, and that this also is one factor that begins to lay the grounds for future violence. If someone has to pay as much as 20 million naira just to express interest in running for a political office, and at the level of the party, they begin to see that some godfather has another anointed person, and meanwhile they have put in their money, and there's no way they can get it out. Isn't that laying the grounds for violence? Isn't that, you know, courting trouble? And when tempers are high, when people have nowhere to turn to, wouldn't that lead to the kind of violence we're seeing? I mean, big money politics, Nigerian politics, is all about big money.
I have followed with a lot of interest the discussions around that, but I wish to say that I beg to differ in the sense that politicians are part of our society. They come from us, they are our brothers, they are our sisters, they are our fathers, and so you cannot remove them from the problem of the entire society. I think there's a problem, and I think the only way to check all of these things that we are complaining about is to revisit religion. And why I'm saying so is because Nigerians, we are notoriously religious. We are either Muslims or Christians, and so these are the two major religions. I'm not oblivious of the fact that there are other people who believe in other faiths, but I think majorly is Islam and Christianity. To say that we are notoriously religious, but how godly are we? And so the question goes back to, we have talked about reforming the judiciary, reforming our educational system, reforming so many things, but we are not talking about reforming those who teach religion. So what am I saying? I'm simply saying that true faith can solve most of the problems that Nigerians have, more so because we belong to these two living faiths, Islam and Christianity. That the two faiths talk about morality, talk about being honest, talk about being accountable, talk about trust, talk about people in the position of leadership should see it as a trust and not as a means of exploiting people. So when we go back to our books and we derive our inspiration from our religious books, from our sacred books, then I'm telling you things will change. So we need to make sure that people who speak about God are people who speak about God and not call people to themselves. Because there are a lot of issues around even those who call to God. So the problem is not just to do with politicians, but it has to do with people who call people unto God, such that the expectation is that when people err, you expect them you expect people to take some kind of correction from people who preach religion. But what happens when the same person who preaches religion is also engaged or involved in the same menace that we're complaining about? So I think we have to revisit the teachings of our faith. Morality has to come back to us. And then also, the law has to take its course. That is, no person on no condition should be allowed to go free when that person has, broken or has breached the law of the land. You cannot kill someone and go back to your bed and sleep. And that's why these criminals are becoming so emboldened, because we live in a country where you get away with whatever you do. Lastly, please, let me say that I have listened also with a lot of interest about the issue about police sometimes, or the security not doing what they're supposed to do at the polling unit. We have an overwhelming population. My sister just spoke about a country of about 200 million. It will take the grace of God for the number of securities we have to be able to man and manage us. But people with an orientation of being lawful, people who respect law, people who are obedient to the law of their land will be managed. But people who everybody does what he wants, it's a matter of having the will or the power to escape. And so what we are saying is that there should be a reform. Religious leaders should live up to the expectation that they're supposed to teach what is godly, what is right, and morality should follow religion. Not just about rituals, but that we should have morale in our mosques, in our churches. And when pastors and imams speak, they should be able to speak the truth. I think this will change the politicians. Not when religious leaders lie, and then you expect the politicians to speak the truth. So I think it's a holistic approach to all of us Nigerians, as religious leaders, as political leaders, as community leaders, as traditional leaders, women leaders, youth leaders, whatever we are, whether market, whatever, we all need to change our attitude. And for that, we need reorientation.
Let's try again, back to the phones. Jos this time. Ada calling in from Jos. Hello, Ada. Are you there?
Hello.
All right.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sure, we can. So go right ahead.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Yes, to curb electoral violence, I feel political office should be made less attractive and less expensive. Our institutions should be strengthened. We have very weak institutions. Another major cause of violence is the fact that those engaged in electoral violence are hardly arrested and prosecuted. Even when they arrest them, after a while, we don't hear much about them again, and then we get to hear that they've been released or bailed by their godfathers. The issue of unemployment, illiteracy, poverty, if you check the profile of those involved in this violence, if you check their profile, which a sociologist would want to do, you'll find out that most of them are people who are jobless, people whose literacy rate is so low, so they don't have self-esteem and all that. So I believe that punitive measures help to regulate people's behavior. I'll say thank you very much, Cyril, for bringing in two women. Bring them more often. Most times we only see men all the time. God bless Nigeria.
All right. Thank you very much, Ada. Most assuredly, it is a gender-sensitive organization, and I can assure you that women always have a part in everything we do here at the NTA. But speaking about women, I've also heard arguments around that one of the problems is that you do not have enough women in Nigerian politics, and that if you do, then perhaps the violence will greatly reduce. Would you take that line, Esther?
Well, first of all, we have enough women in Nigeria, and we certainly have enough in politics. But then we have a politics that is marred by violence. Women by nature are not violent beings.
Run away from it.
Yes, so because once there is violence, a man can run away from when there's violence, but a woman will first of all think of her children. She will go back to, she must make sure something drives her. But a man will always embrace violence. A woman will first of all think of her children, and then she'll say, this is where I draw the line. However, it is in our common interest. It is an existential matter. It must continue to exist. We must, particularly for appointive positions. For instance, now that Mr. President is about to form his cabinet, now that the National Assembly is about to elect principal officers, we must Why don't we need a female speaker, for instance? Why? Because the nature of the person who occupies the office will determine to a great extent the kind of laws and its enforcement. We must look at this thing through the eyes of a woman. So when women, since it is extremely, say, in fact, our politics, elections in Nigeria is armed struggle. And women have not graduated to that position of bearing arms. So can we start with cabinet formation? Can we start with principal officers in the National Assembly? We are calling, since it's about 10, please let's have at least 5, because the nature of laws, you know, the nature of personality occupying, now that we are saying, oh, we want Honorable Nkiru Konye-Iheanacho as Speaker of the House of Reps, we want Remi Tinubu, all that and all that, please. These are the things that will influence our laws and monitor the enforcement of laws, and then you see violence will reduce.
Okay. All right, let's go back to the phones. And Umar, would this be the same Umar Anachi from Birnin Kebbi, a regular caller on this program? Umar, hello.
Yes, hello to you. I'm Umar Anachi calling from Birnin Kebbi. You see, electoral violence has its own cause. One of the causes of electoral violence is injustice. Injustice everywhere. Injustice for the top, injustice for the politicians, injustice for everybody. The symbol of justice is a woman covered her eyes. But in Nigeria, that woman supposed to open her eye because she knows the person that she's going to match, and she knows the kind of match that she's going to do to a person. Sometimes I wonder if at all Nigeria will concern about justice. That is one aspect. Then the other aspect is manufactured poverty. The poverty in Nigeria was not natural, was manufactured.
That's right.
Yes. Then the last one is attractiveness of the political seat, making it more attractive. It becomes lucrative business in Nigeria to join politics. Before you know it, your father, your forefather, your everybody will become rich. So it's lucrative. How can you, just because you are a House of Reps, a senator, you become rich just like that? I mean, it's getting out of hand. May God continue to bless our country. Let me stop here.
All right. Thank you very much, Umar from Birnin Kebbi. Well, Prof, a number of reasons have been adduced. You talked about education and said this is key until you can give education to people, because you talked about the segment of society that seems to be prone to violence, those who have not had the benefit of good education. And by this, I'm not limiting this to just schooling. We've also heard about putting in more women and bringing down the numbers. Well, those we would have loved to have had some empirical evidence of that, to know just how many people have been picked up for violence and how many are males, but it's generally assumed that men are more violent.
Yes.
Well, what's your...
Yeah, women are less prone to acts of violence because of their womanhood, you know, because also they are our mothers, and they become a role model. So apart from that, to be honest with you, one of the ways that we can help this country is to look at our educational system. The teaching of ethics, good behavior in our society is getting eroded in our curriculum, in our school system, and I think we need to do something about that. We have been talking about violence in elections. I want to say, with exception, that Nigerians are good people. We have good people in this country, good politicians. Even when we talk about negative things that are happening in this country, we still have role models. We still have people that have run elections in this country, governors, legislators, and so on, that have not experienced any case of violence during the elections. We need to publish those people as a role model. I have run elections in this country, governorship campaigns. I have never been involved in any act of violence in my 17 years of electioneering in this country.
Wow, that's nice.
I have never had any thug with me, even one. Throughout my life as a governorship candidate, as a governorship aspirant. You can ask from my state in Oyo State. So we need people that will give examples to use that you can run election without violence. You can run elections with fear of God. You can run elections with a focus of good governance. And you can run elections, like Hajia said from Kaduna, with fear of God. That's fear of God in the sense that if I have it, I don't have it. If the other person has it, that is what God has destined. And your time is coming. We need to focus attention on the fact that it is God that gives power, and it is God that takes power. But if we say we want to attain power by all means, we will get the result. So once again, I want to appeal to Nigerian politicians to take things easy and go by the rule of Nigeria as a country and the fear of God. Okay, traditional rulers have not been adequately involved in matters of election in this country. They know the people in the society. They can identify the troublemakers in the society. They can call them to order. And I think we need to use more of our religious leaders, of traditional rulers, in reducing cases of violence during elections in this country.
Okay, let's get back to the phones from Kaduna. Khalid is calling in. Hello, Khalid. Hello?
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Ali Khalid Muhammad from Kaduna. Yes, I want to contribute. Thank you for the opportunity. Madam Esther said it all. That we know what the problem is. You know, human beings, in their own nature, they just don't eat their kind because they are hungry. This violence that we're always talking about, that the youth are hungry, this and that, is not the thing. The real thing is we know exactly what is happening. You can use your fingers to count these guys that are violent in each and every area you can talk of. Each and every polling unit you can talk of. We know them. We know those ones that are supporting them. But the pathetic thing about we Nigerians is we know our problems and we know what to do to solve the problem, but we don't. I'm in my early 30s, but I'm already feeling so, fed up with the system already. Why can't we just do something? The last day I talked to a lady in a call center. I challenged her. I asked this question: are you waiting for a white man from somewhere to tell me good morning as a customer? Tell me good morning. I'm your customer. So that is the problem, and that's the solution. When you see customer, greet him, respect him, and then everything flows. So we know these guys that are committing these atrocities in areas, rumors we know all around that so persons, go to any area you can ask, so person is the notorious guy here, and we know him. They know him. Nobody is doing anything about him. So we're talking about solution now. The phase we're in now is solution. How to end violence. Is simply one word: responsibility. Who is responsible? We have leaders. We have elected recently, just a few days ago. Why wouldn't they be accountable? Then how can we make them accountable? Is what we should start talking about now. Let us begin to make our leaders accountable. Let us begin to ask questions. And let our voice actually be loud enough. We don't have any other place to go to. Nigeria is the only place we have. So let me not take all day talking. I just want to say little that will be important. Let us have a way of making our leaders really first the challenge before them, accountability. Let them take the responsibility. We are looking at them. We are the youth. We are looking at them. They are already failing us, or they have already failed us, but they are given another chance. That is why they are still in business. I don't know what they are transferring to us, younger generation coming up. Already, it's a mess. They can help us out by beginning to actually swallow the pride, take responsibility. It's simple. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you so much. We're back here in the studio, and yes, the last caller but one raised the question of injustice and says that this, leads to the kind of violence we've seen. We've also had suggestions about going back to true values, ethics, or religion, the basis for every of it. And of course, Prof also talked about involving the traditional institutions. But let me hear from you. With all of this, you would see that even with religion and the traditional institutions, sometimes they have been dragged into violence as well. So it makes it so difficult to say which institution can we look at and say, well, so far they've been above board.
Thank you very much. The only institution that you can fall back to is the last hope of a common man. That is the judiciary. And that means that the law must have its force. The law must be applied to all, irrespective of who belongs to who is from who. The major problem we have in Nigeria is we are sentimentally attached to either religion or to ethnicity. We don't look at the problem. Rather, we look at who are behind our problems. When a man commits an offense, the law should take its course without being sentimental about it. But Nigeria is the only country you see a man is caught red-handed committing an offense. And when he's taken to the police station, to the court, they say, oh, they are prosecuting him because he's a Christian. Oh, they are taking him to court because he's a Muslim. We don't look at why are they taking him to court. So the only hope for the common man in Nigeria is the judiciary. And I am bold to say that Nigerian judiciary is up to task. And they are doing, at least, they are doing well. Only that we need to strengthen the institution of judiciary. The judicial arm of government need to be strengthened to perform its duties accordingly.
Okay. Ibrahim is calling in from Eula. This might well be the same Ibrahim who couldn't take earlier on. Ibrahim from Eula. Thanks for calling back. Hello, go right ahead this time. Oh dear.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you very much.
Right.
Yeah. Good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah, I just want to, first of all, I want to commend Madam Esther Khadija, the former minister, and my contribution is very clear and simple. But sincerely speaking, we've been trying so hard in this country to, eradicate or minimize violence, but I think we've not been making good progress. Vanessa will agree with me. You know, there's a saying that says, where there is no law, there is no offense. Okay? You see, the security are always in place. And when you look at it categorically clear, most of this violence either comes in from the politicians or those ones that are in authority. All right, fine. Now, I guess the best way to minimize this or eradicate this is still shoving responsibility back to them. If you're a senator and there's an issue in your constituency, if you're a member of House of the Representatives, there's an issue in your constituency, I think what we need to do, or what the judiciary or the authority needs to do, is to call those people first, to give us a report. This is how you get to know if there's a connection between the people, between the senator or the member of House of Representatives, which is people. You all agree with me, once these people are elected, you know, they move to Abuja and continue their lifestyle there. There is no connection whatsoever with the people that elected them. You know, and the people that elected them are always worried by, you know, looking at how they travel, or looking at the high lifestyle they exhibit. So if there are issues, you call them and give them responsibility and give them a time frame, you know, to report back to the authority. And whereby there is no good report, you know, point finger of blame to them. From there, they get back to the state governors. From the state governors, you know, they try to have, you try to understand that, or you know, people will now get to know that if there's a connection or if there is none, you know, if these people are really serving their purposes while they are there. But in a situation whereby nobody is coming out to tell you what is happening, for instance, in like the issue now that is happening in Zamfara. You know, if the senator there cannot, you know, tell us or give us reasons why these things are happening, then he has no business to be there. If the member of House of Representatives covering those constituencies cannot come out, you know, and tell us what is happening and the measures they've taken, how they try to curtail the situation from escalating, then they have no reason to be there. Then the governor as well. You know, but there is no link, there is no communication, there is no team play, you know, between the politicians, the senators, the members of House of Representatives, the governors, and even the State House of Assembly. So they just allow people to carry laws into their hands, and it's a serious problem. Someone talk about responsibility. This is how you share responsibility. You know, most of these crises emanate from the political dispensation. So we can still use that same ideology to curtail it. Once the military, the police could not get substantial evidence towards what is happening, then you lay it down on either the senator or the member House of Representatives or the State House of Assembly. Then that should be fine. You know, people need to be fine. You need to hang on something on them so that so that the whole world will not know that they are equally involved or there's negligence or of that nature. Right. I wish you success, and I wish Nigeria would turn out to be a greater country that we've always hoped for. Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you very much. Thank you. Right. Let's go to Kaduna Center again, and Haja Khadija. Well, no segment can be absolved of the blame for what Nigeria has gone through. And there are those who have said, look, the family, which is the very first unit, should also take part of the blame. You yourself talked about going back to the true tenets of faith. And so people have asked, what is the place of the family in all of this? Now, it doesn't really matter if it's a poor or rich family. There used to be values. And so what role should the family play in stemming it? Because you do find kids who are raised in homes who are on the streets who are not yet of voting age and who ordinarily are not expected to understand politics, and you find them everywhere there's a rally held and they're yelling the name of one politician or the other. They are the ones you find with sticks and stones and such things.
I think it's on purpose that God Almighty decided to create everyone, all of us, apart from Adam and Eve. All of us came from a family that's mother and father, or if I exclude, if I may use what the Christians will say, Jesus, who came from just a mother without a father. But all of us come from a mother and father. And so it means that it is on purpose that God decided that the way we all come into being is from a mother and father, and they all have a role to play in the lives of their children. The first school that the child passes through is the home, from the father to the mother. And so once there's a defect, or there's a default, or there's a problem there, then you expect that it might be very, very difficult, because there are two schools in this life. Like I've always said, I've heard from teachers of psychology say that the first place, which is the home, then the second one, the environment, the third one, the school that you send somebody to learn from. So parents ideally have their different roles as a mother or as a father. The mother has her role, the father has his role, and what we are seeing today is that gradually, and I'm sorry if it offends men, but that the fathers are beginning to run away from their responsibility of shouldering what they should shoulder. Rather, they leave it to the women, the wives, to do that for them. And so you find a woman doing her own and doing the role of taking the role of the father. So I've always said that we're talking now about justice. Wherever there's injustice, there's bound to be problem. There's bound to be confusion. So because of the imbalance, because of the injustice in the homes, where now mothers play the role of mother and father plus, then there's a gap. There's no how a woman can act like the man or the father. No matter how much you do it well, you can never get it well. So I think part of it is that, and it goes back to this issue, the menace of Al-Majri now in the north. You begin to wonder whether these children have parents, and truly they come from a parent. But what is happening? Where are the fathers? For some of us who know what is happening, we know that it is not the fault of the mother, but rather the fault of the father, who will decide to pick the child without even the knowledge of the mother and send him somewhere to where the mother will never get to know. So I wouldn't want to use the word irresponsibility, but I would say that lack of shouldering the responsibility that men should shoulder has contributed to the failure in our homes. And then again, you find out that now, because the woman has double responsibilities now, so she has to work. And unfortunately, in the north especially, we live in a place where the men are not educated enough, not to talk even about the women. So how can she work? She has no skills. She has no education. And she's made to fend for 8, 10, 14, 15 children. So that's where the abuse comes. And so the children roam the street. They move unguided. They do what they want. And now they become victims of sexual abuse. They become victims of being introduced into drugs at early age. They begin to steal because they are hungry, they need to eat. And so all of these are the things we see. So fundamentally, the home plays the primary and the vital role. And where that is missing, then whatever you do again, it's like not having a foundation. And so now the society, because the home is not good, the society also, this house has problem, the other house, the next, the neighbor. So we have a community that has lost focus. The value system is zero, close to zero. But So I think, again, we will continue to blame the government as if it is the government's responsibility now to speak to every parent and tell them, look, be responsible for your children, do this for your children. Lying. Children learn how to lie from their homes. Fathers lie, mothers lie, sisters lie, brothers lie. So that is where we pick lying from. And then we graduate now to come to an environment where everybody is lying. So we learn from the lies of others. So I think that we need also to revisit our homes to make sure that as a father, I don't know what's going to happen. We have lawyers here, and I hope that a law will be passed where every man who procreates a child must be held responsible. So it's not just about holding our political leaders to be responsible or our religious leaders, but also our parents, our fathers, to be responsible for the children that they bring forth to the world. Something has to be done. And I think sometimes I said that maybe we need to be locking up some of these, I'm sorry to use irresponsible fathers who just abscond from their responsibility of fathering children, and they're becoming a menace to the public. So I think the government should not just allow people to have children and throw them on the street, but rather everybody must be held responsible for the children that he brings forth. So this is my take, and it will help us if we check the responsibility of parents. It will definitely check in some of these killings, some of this kidnapping, some of this armed robbery that we have on the street, because it looks like there are people who have lost touch with their parents. I cannot imagine somebody who must have passed through a good parenting that will come up all of a sudden, begin to kill. And, 30 years ago, we used to read in books about kidnapping, and I never thought that in our life we'll live to witness it. It was in James Hadley Chase and other books that we read about kidnapping and then ransom, and we used to visualize how will it look like to kidnap. And all of a sudden now, we have become, everybody is susceptible to being kidnapped. And it's as a result of lack of good parenting at home. So we need to really look at that too. Government should not just allow everybody to do what he wants, but that government should be serious about sanctioning parents who have decided to be irresponsible.
Let me just put this to you. Esther Uzoma touched on it, and let me just ask you, do you believe that if you have more women in such positions, the violence you're witnessing is likely to reduce, as they say, that you belong to the same school that women would not engage in that much violence if they were in positions?
I think that's why God, in his infinite wisdom, decided to leave the child to the mother because of her non-violent disposition and attitude. You cannot imagine, a father now carrying a baby for 9 months in the tummy. I mean, it's unimaginable. But forget that. Maybe that one you are forced to carry it. But try to imagine leaving a baby who is helpless, a one-day old old baby with a man, and telling him to give him milk, not even breast milk, but give him milk, and then change the diapers and change the clothes, bath the baby, put the baby to sleep. The baby will be dead before 12 midnight. So I think the nature of women, by the way we are created, we are created to be peaceful, we are created to be loving and caring, and we empathize much more than men, and that's why you realize that it's very, very difficult for a woman to kill. And again, it speaks to this issue of non-inclusion of women in our affairs, in governance, in decision-making in Nigeria. I think fundamentally it's what is leading us to this chaos. We have over 50% of the population of the country. I think women constitute more than 50%. So imagine living behind excluding 50%. If you exclude 50% of the population, then you have not done anything. So we need to work with more women. We have now women that are well experienced, women who have the competency, women who have the integrity and credibility to do all of those things. But because of the patriarchy, that is so much entrenched in our culture and our society, women are finding it very difficult. In fact, we are retrogressing. The only thing that is left now, and I think we are championing, is to queue and vote for the men to take over. But anyway, I'm happy for Kaduna State, at least the first time. The second time in the north, now we're having a woman deputy governor. So someday we shall get there. I think we're hopeful that we're getting somewhere. But we need to do more, honestly. We need to involve women. We cannot afford as a country to exclude 50% of our population. That country is not serious. So Nigeria should be serious to take us serious and not just give us women affairs. You know, they always appoint us as women affairs. Please begin to give men women affairs and give us more serious ministries like education, health, and other ministries. And let the men take over from us from Ministry of Women Affairs. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Well, back here in Abuja, and we begin to wind down now. And Prof, it would seem from all you've said and the calls that we've had, it's not as much as not having enough legislation in place, but a question of not enforcing such legislation. And so as we wind down, what would be your recommendation in terms of legislation, laws, enforcing the laws, and, of course, reforming the entire political system that Nigeria operates?
Nigeria is not about lacking in laws, it's not about lacking legislation, it's not about lacking in programs, it's not about lacking in policies, it's about the will to implement these various laws and so on. And part of the lack of the will to implement is because we are not sincere with ourselves in this country. We close our eyes, we turn our eyes to things that concern us and things that concern this country as a whole. Like I said earlier, Nigerians are good people. And like Hajia Hadiza said from Kaduna, we need to start from the home. And I also want to emphasize our educational system, that we need to reform our educational system. Judiciary will not need reformation as such, but actually, support from people, from the politicians, to make sure that we do the right things in this country. It's a matter of doing the right thing. And I think that I haven't lost hope in this country. Nigeria is a country, and if we look at democracy that we are practicing, we are qualified to say it's experimental democracy. And I believe that with what has happened this year in 2019 elections, the elections that are coming in Nigeria will be getting better and better because we are learning from the system. We are learning from the experience that we have had in the last few years. That we have started election in this country. And I think along the line, there is hope. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Yes, as we are winding down, therefore, I would strongly recommend that now that this is the second term of the Mr. President, he has a fantastic opportunity to further solidify the foundations he has laid. What am I talking about? He promised us that he will implement the national gender policy. That can we have more women, for instance, in INEC? Out of 12 national commissioners, we only have 3. Resident electoral commissioners, only 1. INEC is not a boys' club. It is not. And because if you man it with men, it gives people the impression that, yes, I want people who are strong. The first evolving trend of insecurity is feminization. A fertility woman will enter here, she'll be decked in Prada. You won't know she's security. Intelligence gathering. And so I will strongly recommend as we are winding down, can we have a cabinet that is gender infused with gender? Can we have a National Assembly that is infused with that gender policy? Can we have a female speaker, for instance, or have a 4-time ranking member? These are the things that will influence the quality of laws that we have and also influence the quality of enforcement. It is not a boys' club. And so, if we can get this, so that it can be said of Mr. President, these are the things he did. By the time we infuse women into these processes, it will give the thugs the impression that, listen, our mothers are here. Our sisters are here. They will lay down their arms. But when they see men who dead, bearing arms, they also brace up. So we must begin to think along these lines.
Right, so you have you recommend an all-encompassing solution. Just fighting it out with brazen shoulders won't do it, right?
That is true.
Go along with that.
That is true. Yeah. I agree with Ajia that training of a child begins from the home. When you train a child well, he goes out to manifest and make the father proud. But where, as a parent, you fail to train your child, when he goes out, he's going to exhibit what you did not train or what you train him. So first and foremost, to curb this electoral violence, we need home training. That is the first point of contact of a human being. As a father, what I refuse to teach my son today, he will go out to learn. And whatever I teach him today, rightly or wrongly, he will exhibit it out there to represent me. Therefore, the first and foremost advice is home training. Secondly, I do not agree with people who say that we need more laws. As a matter of fact, I believe that there are too many laws in Nigeria that are confusing us. There are countries without codified laws that are living peacefully. All we need is implementation of these laws. And as a matter of fact, when I am conscious of whom I am, where I'm coming from, I don't even need law to obey. Obedience to law, obedience to the constituted authority become an inflow. So the law that says don't steal, if you steal, this is a repercussion. When I learn from home that stealing is a wrong thing, I will not even need the Nigerian law to curb me from stealing. So all I can say is, in this electoral system, we need implementation of our laws. Electoral acts are specified what offenses are electoral offenses and how they are to be treated. We need implementation of these laws by law enforcement agents and the judiciary. And that is why I say that judiciary has been up and doing, but we need more of work from judiciary. And again, I say, when we strengthen judiciary, judiciary will deliver. So I strongly believe that Nigeria is moving forward by implementing the laws.
All right, Ajia Khadija, just before I will say goodbye to you, you've talked at length about what work the Peace Commission has been able to do in Kaduna State, and these are, what are the ideals that you want to push out to other Nigerians? Is this some model that you recommend, given the work that the Peace Commission has done, and with the knowledge that many times we have just taken solutions and it has ended there? You've talked about continuity and the sustainability of the scheme.
Well, I'm calling on all Nigerians, and especially the states, you know, the other 35 or 34, if we remove Plateau, because they have something in place, that I think there should be a peace commission, or you can name it whatever you want, but a platform should be provided. More so because if you look at the whole country is characterized by a different kind of violent conflict based on different issues. So I think, and the people are so divided, and so there's a need need for that one Nigeria, one people, one destiny, that we need to have a platform like this that will provide all the community, various ethnic communities or ethnic nationalities in the country to sit, air out their grievances, and then so that we chart a course towards a future. Because we are still trapped in what happened in the past. We are still trapped in what has happened, and there's a need now to free ourselves from all of that and see and chart a course towards moving together, because it's by design that God decided to keep us together in Nigeria as Muslims, as Christians, as different ethnic communities speaking different language with different cultures. So the beauty of it all is to appreciate one another, respect one another, and then work as a team, because honestly, I think one of the strengths of the United States of America has everything to do with the diversity and the way they live as not as a melting pot, but as a salad. You know, salad, you have all of the ingredients there living together, you can see them, but they're in one plate. So let us stay together without differences, yet appreciating and admitting that Nigeria is our country together, and that we must work towards promoting Nigeria to be peaceful and for development. So I call on other states to emulate Kaduna State by initiating something like this, and that, like I said, this commission will continue to work with the people, good people of Kaduna, towards finding a lasting solutions to all the realities, the issues that are real, and the issues that are even perceived. And until that day, when we all embrace one another as one people of Kaduna State.
Well, looks like our signals have just about disappeared from Kaduna. But anyway, it's a good point to say thank you very much, Hajia Khadija Gambo, Permanent Commissioner, Kaduna State Peace Commission, who joined us from Kaduna Network Center. Just the last moments there, I think we lost the signals, but not to worry. We were just about to say thank you to her and to say goodbye. Hajia Khadija Gambo, Permanent Commissioner, Kaduna State Peace Commission. She joined us from Kaduna Network Center. Back here in Abuja studios, well, it's time to say thank you to all our guests. And Professor Tawhid Adedoja is a professor of education and former Minister of Sports and Special Duties, as well as a former governorship candidate in Oyo State. And quite a number of people would have wondered where you've been all this while after your stint as Minister of Sports.
Yeah.
Well, so it's good to see you again.
Thank you.
And we hope we'll see more of you around.
Thank you.
All right. And, well, thank you so much, Esther Ozoba. It's always a pleasure to have you join us here. We spent so many nights here.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Talking about these same elections.
Yes.
So I'd like to thank you again for being around
pleasure.
here. Thank you
pleasure.
so much. And for Johnson Usman, legal practitioner, who's joined us. This is perhaps your first time on NTA Tuesday Live, if I'm not mistaken. Right. So thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us.
I'm also welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you
All
so
right.
much.
And so that's our program. We thank you for being part of it. Next week we'll reach you again with NTA Tuesday Live. I'm Cyril Stover. Bye for now.